Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking, and oh man, have I been dreading this episode. Well, let's just rip the bandage off and give it everything we've got. This is my review of Pokemon X and Y. Released worldwide in October of 2013, Pokemon X and Y really revolutionized the franchise and added many key elements that we come to expect from Pokemon games today. This game set the format and groundwork for all the Pokemon games that I'll be reviewing after this. All 2 of them. The biggest and most notable change was the graphical overhaul. Yeah, it took Pokemon until 2013 to make it into the world of 3D, well, with the exception of spin-offs like Colosseum and XD. However, they didn't go full 3D yet. The characters still had the chibi influence from all prior generations, which you can see in their stumpy little legs and bouncy movements. Honestly, I think Pokemon would still be a 2D series if they didn't feel compelled to make the change for the first games being released on the 3DS. Game Freak are the true defenders of flat justice. The second big change was, well, I could just say it, but there's someone much more qualified than me and has been waiting for this moment, so take it away! Fairies! 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 The Fairy type. The first new type introduced since Dark and Steel in Generation 2. Much like how Dark and Steel were introduced solely to balance out the overpowered Psychic type, Fairy was introduced to balance out the overpowered Dragon type. Before Fairy, Dragon was only weak to 2 types, Ice and Dragon. So when fighting a Dragon type, you had 2 options: counter it with another Dragon type for some sweet MAD, or send out an Ice type that would probably die first since Ice is notoriously weak. Add in the fact that pretty much every generation introduced a strong as frick pseudo-legendary Dragon type, you begin to see why Fairy was necessary. New Fairy type Pokemon were introduced like a flower, whipped cream, keys? And Sylveon, and plenty of old Pokemon were given the new type like Gardevoir, Mr. Mime, Granbull, and Whimsicott. Speaking of big changes to Pokemon, perhaps none were bigger, literally, than Mega Evolution. Mega Evolution, as I mentioned in my review of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, was a temporary evolution for certain Pokemon that boosted their stats and occasionally gave the Pokemon a new type or ability. Game Freak would try to replicate the success of Mega Evolution with new gimmicks in Gens 7 and 8, and get progressively worse at it each time, but that's for another day. Mega Evolution added a lot more variety to battles and made a lot of forgotten Pokemon suddenly more appealing team members. Pokemon like Kangaskhan, Pinsir, Mawile, Medicham, Banette, Absol, Abomasnow, Beedrill, Slowbro, Sableye, Glalie, Lopunny, and Audino benefited the most. However, it also made a few already strong Pokemon even stronger, like the Kanto starters, Gyarados, Mewtwo, Garchomp, Salamence, and Metagross. As you'll see in a few minutes, Mega Evolution was a great concept and gameplay mechanic that can be summed up in 2 words: missed potential. Now let's begin our journey through the Wee Baguette Kalos region. That's my way of telling you Kalos is based on France. You start your adventure as either Callum or Serena, and both of them have pretty bland designs, but that's intentional because they're fully customizable for the first time. You can change their skin color, hat accessory, hairstyle, and clothes. And as you progress through the story and towns, you'll find more outfit options and can really make the character your own. It's also at this moment when I'd like to bring up Serena in the Pokemon anime. I've mostly gone without talking about the anime in these reviews because I've barely seen it, but the only time I watched it with any consistency was during the X and Y era, and I hated Serena's treatment. From what I saw, she's basically portrayed as another Bianca, but with a huge crush on Ash because anime wouldn't be anime without dense protagonists. And sex, but that's for a much later date. The reason it upset me is because Serena is the only challenging opponent you'll have in all of Kalos. I picked Callum, making Serena my rival, and in your band of merry misfits you're forced on this journey with, she's the only one who is actually capable in Pokemon battles. You'll also be accompanied by the energetic guy who just wants to dance, Tierno, the shy guy who just wants to fill out the Pokédex like a nerd, Trevor, and the girl who basically has Serena's anime personality and just wants to have fun, Shauna. One complaint many older Pokemon fans have is that the rivals have been steadily getting worse since essentially Generation 3, and this is when I start to agree. I like friendly competition as much as the next guy, but I also like challenge. Having one rival that is competent doesn't excuse having 3 who I can't even trust to hold a Pokeball the right way. Sadly, Serena is the last competent rival at the time of this video's release. If I had to rank them, Serena would be at the top, then Shauna, because at least she has a mini-story and interacts with the protagonist throughout the story, then Tierno and Trevor way the f down to Dianoga from Star Wars. I'm not saying they're forgettable or inconsequential to the plot, I'm just not going to mention them for the rest of this video, and you're not going to notice. Anyway, after you meet up with the preschoolers you'll be chaperoning, you find out Professor Sycamore has tasked you with completing the Pokédex and Gym League, and has provided 3 starters for a group of 5. You'll get to choose between the Fire-type crime against humanity Fennekin, the Water-type that 99% of players pick Froakie, and the Grass-type 1% of players pick Chespin. This batch of starters is down there with Gen 4 in terms of quality. Fennekin will eventually evolve into this hideous abomination and waste of a good type combo. Chespin will eventually evolve into Captain America if his experiment went horribly wrong. Also, Quilladin. Ugh. And Froakie actually has a good evolution, so 1 out of 3 ain't bad. Actually, it is kind of bad. Regardless of your choice, Serena will get the one with the type advantage, and Shauna will get the one with the type disadvantage. One of my biggest problems with X and Y, which carries over into Gen 7 and 8, but we'll get there, is that it feels afraid to ever stop holding your hand. All the gym leaders in Elite Four have at most 4 Pokemon. That's just over half a full team. In fact, most of them just have 3. And none of them use Mega Evolution. I get that they didn't want to introduce Mega Evolution too early in the story, because it's not until a Pokemon is fully evolved that you can use it, so it would be a bit unfair, but there's no excuse for the final few gym leaders in Elite Four not to use any. In fact, no one uses Mega Evolution. You have one required story battle that is just Mega Lucario versus Mega Lucario, a fight against the evil team leader, and a fight against the champion. That's it! Speaking of the evil team leader, I haven't mentioned the evil team yet. This time, it's Team Flare, and they're the Pokemon equivalent of Nazis! I mean, just look at this evidence. They want to create a perfect world filled with perfect beings and will eliminate anyone that doesn't fit their description of perfect. They occupy the Pokemon equivalent of France. The leader is the brains behind something called the Holocaster. I'll say Holocaster again, and you can put the pieces together. And look in the name of the games they're in. X and Y. You know, like in Axis. But I'll stop doing MatPat's job for him and do my job. Introducing all the members and their weird style choices. The first of 5 Team Flare scientists who is totally not flashing anyone and everyone behind her, Aliana. If you share a name with this scientist, then I hope you at least got her cool glasses, Bryony. There's not a thing she could offer me that would get me to pay 5 million Pokédollars, Celosia. It's really hard to come up with funny lines for these scientists because they barely have any personality, Mabel. The most Essentia Team Flare scientist, Xerosic. And the rich CEO of a successful company who ends up being an antagonist, which will never, ever be repeated again, who wants to follow in a king's footsteps, Lysander. Lysander is probably the closest we've gotten to a twist villain in Pokemon. Yeah, Ghetsis was the real mastermind of Team Plasma, but he was a part of the group the whole time. You encounter Lysander quite a few times throughout the story, but it's not until much later that you actually learn he's the leader of Team Flare. Although, with that outfit and hair, it was hardly a surprise. Regardless of their strange look, Team Flare is a solid evil team that I respect a lot more in hindsight, having seen the 2 that come after it. Lysander's plan revolves around firing off an ancient weapon to completely reset the world, and intends to use the power of either Xerneas or Yveltal, whatever, to do so. Xerneas is the being that can grant life, and this guy is the being that ends it. There's also Zygarde, who keeps them both in order, but he's not relevant to the plot at all. The Aura Trio aren't the best trio of legendaries, and they definitely leave a lot to be desired. I blame the lack of any kind of follow-up game as the reason why they all feel so underdeveloped. Seriously, X and Y are the only Pokemon games not to get a sequel. No third version, no X2 and Y2, nothing. Jury's still out on Sword and Shield though. To be fair, I'm not exactly hopping at the chance to revisit the Kalos region anytime soon, it's so boring! Outside of the expansive Lumio City, which isn't even as impressive as Castelia, all of the towns and cities are very basic and forgettable, just like their gym leaders. Oh boy, this is gonna be a hard one, that's what she said, but let's do it! The Camera Woman, who never lets a single smile escape her focus, because why not have 2 bug-type gym leaders in the field of visual arts in back-to-back games? Viola! The wild, yet cool and collected rock climber, whose hair looks like it has candy in it, so I guess you could call it rock candy, Grant! The evolution fighter, who exists only to plug the new features like Mega Evolution and roller skates, Corina! The old growth is still in bloom, which sounds a lot more disgusting than probably intended, Ramos! The inventor lighting up the world, who is the living embodiment of that Bart meme,
The future is now thanks to science,
Clement! The very underwhelming fairy-type maiden from Johto, Valerie! The woman who wouldn't look out of place as a member of the Starlight Brigade, Olympia! The guy who probably wrote his description himself because he is an absolute pushover of a final gym leader, Wolfric! The Fire-type Elite Four member who was in Team Flare before you destroyed it, making for one awkward encounter, Malva! The famous Water-type chef, because why not have a second Water-type opponent closely tied to food in back-to-back generations, Seabold! The Honorable Steel-type Knight of the Elite Four, Wickstrom! The Dragon-type Elite Four member whose entire life is defined by her Sinnoh origins, Drasna! And the woman who appears like twice throughout the entire game before being revealed as the champion, because that's totally a step up from previous generations, Diantha! Man, these gym leaders are disappointing in retrospect. After playing through the Unova games and seeing how fleshed out those characters were, and meeting the leaders from Gens 1 through 4, these ones are all so bland. They don't add anything to any aspect of the story except for Karina teaching you about Mega Evolution, I guess, and none of them are strong, so you won't even remember battling against them. And that's the main problem with X and Y. The reason I was dreading this episode is because it's so forgettable. The game's balancing is terribly off, so every battle is a breeze, none of the characters stick out in any way, and even the frickin' Poke-Nazis end up being forgettable. Seriously, these were the first Pokemon games I ever played, and I played them when they came out. I should have fond memories of my journey throughout my first region, assembling my first team and all that, but I don't. That's why I haven't mentioned my team yet, because I genuinely don't remember what team I used. In case some people think I just forgot because it's been about 8 years, Oros came out a year later and I still remember those vividly, and I've only played through them once when they came out. All I know is that I used Delphox and Sylveon, and I think I used the Lucario and Lapras that are basically given to you, along with Snorlax and I think Lickitung, but that's just a shot in the dark. Now I know, I technically used 2 Sylveons, but I hadn't established my rules yet, so that doesn't count. Anyway, completing the story of X and Y unlocks yet another story with our favorite Interpol agent, Looker. This time centered around a Pokemon thief, a girl named Emma, and Xerosic. It's pretty fun, and the story is actually pretty good, but there's really not much to it. Overall, Pokemon X and Y are a classic case of style over substance. The graphical overhaul and few new gimmicks couldn't save what was otherwise a basic, paint-by-numbers Pokemon game that I believe would be looked back on a lot more negatively if the following games weren't all worse. These next 2 episodes are not going to be fun. 5 out of 10. And that's it. We are rapidly approaching the end of the first series on this channel with only 2 games left to review. Make sure to like the video, subscribe, and ring the bell if you enjoyed this video, and check out all the other videos I've done. This is your captain speaking, and next time, we begin our relaxing Hawaiian vacation. I hope to see you there.